Today,
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
good morning, May.
Good morning.
Okay.
Homes are around today.
You just left.
That's it, you got the land.
I probably is.
Probably afternoon will be done. Okay, so noon based on base. Yesterday's Gemara, which we tried, was about it says in the Mishnah Shedra Bigel Golas, both here and in Ahlus. Means Ahlus is a Mishnah, it's all about Tumas Mace. And here talking about Nazir that became Tamei Mace, so he has to be Megalech. And our Mishnah said that it seems to say that there are different conditions sometimes for a Nazir to stop it, cancel his Naziros than a regular Tumas Mace. So the question wasn't general. This was a general question. It could have been in Ahlus. When it says the spine and the skull, Shedra Golas, does mean both of them together. That's going to be Tumas Oil and the Nazir Megalech, or it's going to be either one alone. The spine, or the skull. Either one alone is going to be Tumas Mace. The Gemara tried to bring many rice, and none of them worked. We finished yesterday with the Gemara didn't say by the Lipshata, but I mean it's like Tiboy, take it, because the Gemara didn't bring a proof. Just to go through the last raya yesterday, but might bring us into today's sugya. The last raya was from Toshma the Tanya, Beshama Yomi. Here it said a Beshama. We had yesterday, let's highlight it again. There was a Beishamai, and there was a Beis Hillel, and there was a Shammai, which Leib Yaakov asked us yesterday that isn't Beishamai and Shammai go together? So the answer is no. When he Mishais like that, they're the Shammai and Beishamai. I didn't have a chance, so I didn't look it up. It's spoken about that Shammai was not the Rebbe of the Beis Shammai, and that's a historical issue that I hope to maybe bring in tomorrow. But I made a note to remember.
Was Beis Hillel the Rav of Beis
Yeah, I
Hillel?
think so. I think so. You don't find Hillel against Beis Hillel, but Beis Shammai you do find that there's Beis Shammai and the Shammai. He's not after the Rebbe, but I'll try to find the source for that. But there's a din of Roba. I'll go a little bit slower today because I'm not in the rush because I don't have the whole daf to say. So let's do what we could, and we could maybe figure it out together or see the problem more than just reading the Gemara, more as figuring it out. So there was a din of Roba Samos, a quarter of a cob, which is about the volume of 6 eggs. It has Tumas Ohel. And there's a machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel and Shammai. Beis Shammai says, okay, I didn't mean to do the yellow came out over here, but I'm not going to just do Beis Hillel over here, just to highlight Beis Hillel. Okay, it's Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, and Shammai. Beis Shammai says, so there are a couple of shots. I just said one shot. Then it means that if it will be one bone, that's the size of a rova, that's not enough to have this tumah of Robat Samos. Robat Samos has to be at least from 2 or 3 bones. The Gemara is going to change it right away. There's going to be a Yeshua that's going to explain a little different than the simple pshat. And we'll put that in parentheses again. We're going back over yesterday's. And the Yeshua is going to explain what Beis Shammai meant. But so far, the words might have meant that it has to be coming from bones, from 2 or 3 bones, which would mean that if it comes from one bone, you have one big bone that's the size of the volume of 6 eggs, robot, that's not enough. It wouldn't be tummy. It has to have a condition that it should be at least from 2 bones, 2 or 3 bones. Basil says that's also not enough to be tummy. Even if you have a robot somewhat from 2 or 3 bones, it's not enough. Minagvia, it has to be from the body, which some say, okay, well, that's simple shot. They'll say that it means from the main essence of the body, which means merova binyan or merova minyan. That has to be either from the majority of the structure or the majority of the number, which would mean that you have a robot samos. Everybody's coming to explain what robot samos means. This quarter kav of a samos, that's tamei ohel. What are the conditions? Beis Shammai said 2 or 3 bones. It has to be comprised 2 or 3 bones. It can't just be one bone. And Beis Hillel can't be just one from one bone. It has to be from 2 or 3 bones. And Beis Hillel says that it has to comprise rov binyan or rov minyan, which means most of the structure, which we'll see soon. What does it mean, most of the structure? Most we'll see, it's going to say soon that most of the height, the majority of the height of a man, which is going to be the thigh and the calf, will make up most of the height of the man. And the bones that are going to comprise the roba kav, that's going to have tumas ohel, has to be from such a kind of a chashivus that is from the majority of the structure, or the majority of the number. We know there are 248 Avrohom, so Rov is going to be 125. 248, one would have been 124, so tip the scale 125. So you'll have Rov minion, the majority of the number of bones. That is what the Rov Akav was made out of. Of course, if you have Rov minion, even if it wouldn't be a Rov Akav, it will be from a small person, a baby. So Rov minion is also Tamei. Oh, that's what it says in the Mishnah, that Rov minion is Tamei. But here that it's saying that the din of Rova has to be May Rov minion or May Rova minion, that it'll be pieces of bones. If you have the whole bones, then it's going to be Tamei. If you have 125 Gorim, then even if it doesn't come up to be a Rova, even if it's smaller, it's also going to become Tamei because it has the condition called Rov minion. But here it's saying that if you have May Rov minion, so that's a condition in order to have the tumor of Robat Samos, it has to comprise the bones that make up the majority of the structure or the bones that make up the majority of the count. It's not going to be the whole bones because then you have a tumor inside that alone. That's it, pieces of bones. But you have pieces of 125 bones. It's a very strange case, but let's say that would be the case. And you have Robat Samos, and they're comprised of the Rova is made up of the bones of Rov Binyan or the bones of Rov Minyan. So the way we learned it so far, there are two opinions, Beishamai Beisil, Beishamai that it's going to be telling much easier. As soon as you have it made up of 2 or 3 bones, it's already enough. And Beisil says, no, you have to have Rov Binyan or Rov Minyan. Rabbi Yeshua is a Tana that's later than Beishamai Beisil. He's going to come to reconcile that Beishamai Beisil are not arguing so much. Not such a big machlokas, they really mean the same thing, they're not arguing at all. And Beishamai just meant to say Rov Binyan. His 2 or 3 is another way of saying Rov Binyan, most of the structure. And Beisil is adding on that Rov Binyan is also good enough. How does Rabbi Yeshua say that? I could reconcile them to mean the same thing. Beishamai says Shnaim Shlosha, when he said those words, Shnaim Shlosha, those are the words that he said. Shnaim Shlosha. You know what he means? He means 2 calves and a thigh, or 2 thighs and a calf. That's called Rov Binyano Shel Adam Begoba. That's most of his height. So Beishamai also wasn't just talking about 2 or 3 bones. If you learn the simple words of Beishamai, he says 2 or 3 bones is enough. It can't be 1 bone. If you have 1 bone, that part of 1 bone, a big bone, and part of it is or part of it is a Rova Akav, that's enough to be Tamei. So Bishua is saying, no, I want to make that Beishamai shouldn't be arguing so extremely on Beis Hillel. He meant to say a certain 2 or 3 bones, the 2 or 3 bones that are going to make up Rov Binyan, which is the 2 calves and a thigh, and the 2 thighs and a calf. That since that's the height of a person, it's Rov of the height of a person, which is also questionable. I mean, I would ask, is that so in the Messias that the thighs and the calf already make up the Rov Goba? I would have thought not. But okay, let's take it as it does.
In my case, they do.
Okay.
Some people have longer legs than other people. So when
Uh-huh.
I sit down, I don't look very tall, but when I stand up, I'm tall.
Okay. So that's what Beishamai meant to say. That the Rova Akav, that's Tamei, is only if the bones that make up the Rova Akav are the 2 or 3 bones, 3 bones. The question why it's called 2 or 3, it means altogether you have to have 3, you have to have Rov.
No, because if you have 2 in the same level, then that's not.
So you have to have 3.
So then you have to.
So why is it you always have to have? How are you going to get Rov with having only 2 bones? You want to say
Because
that?
if you have 1 of each bone,
Then
then
are you saying that it will be enough? How come it doesn't say
2 is
that?
enough.
Interesting, he doesn't say that.
It says 2 or 3.
Right,
So
but the Rabbi Yeshua didn't say that. He said, "Oh, shnei shokayim v'yerech echad. Oh, shnei yerechayim v'shok echad." He doesn't say that 1 shok and 1 yerech is also good enough. So he seems to say that it's not good enough. So the Mefarshim explained, what is it going to be 2? You always have to have 3. You have to have two thighs and a calf, or 2 calves and a thigh. It's not enough to have a calf and a thigh. So they explain why sometimes it's called 2, when it's called 3, but we'll leave out that detail. As long as you have Rov Binyano, it has to be the maybe that's called the Rov Binyano.
You say Binyano, you mean height-wise of the
Begova.
body?
It says Begova.
Mhm.
Begova. Okay, maybe there's better shot than I said, but something like that. And comes out to Beishamai didn't just say any 2 or 3 bones. He meant specific bones that are going to make up the Rov Binyan. And then Beisil said, you should know that Rov Binyan is also good enough. Beisil only min agvia, which means from the body, which means also like saying that it meant the essence of the body. Omer Rov Binyan, like you said, Omer Rov Binyan, which means the majority of the count. He says here, Hoel, the Yeshnam, the Mifrikei Yadayim V'Raglayim. So I don't know what the Hoel means over here, but it means that in the hands and the feet, that'll make up already 120 bones, because each hand and each foot has 30. It means that cost by each finger is going to be 6, and there are 5. 6 times 5 is 30. That altogether, the mifrakim, the joints, the different Avrohom in the hands and the feet, will make up 120. It's not 125. You need a couple of more, because 120 is not yet the robe. But maybe he means to say, and a couple more. I don't know where's those 5 missing. But so far, we reconciled Bisham and Bisil to be pretty close. And both of them said that the din of Rov Atzamos is when it's comprised of Rov Minyan or Rov Binyan. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a din of Rov Atzamos. The famous din that a quarter kav of bones is Matami Ba'oel is only if it has one of these 2 things, that the bones are make up Rov Binyan or Rov Minyan. Not that it makes up Rov Binyan or Rov Minyan, because then that Rov Binyan will be Tamei itself without a Rov Kav. It doesn't have to have that condition. But if you don't have the whole Rov Binyan, you only have parts of those bones, but those are chashav bones, either the structure or the height, the structure, the majority of the height, or the majority of the number. So you have pieces of all those bones. That's enough. That's the condition necessary to be Tomei for Rova Atzamos. Shama Yomer Afilu Etzem Min Hashedro Min Hagagolos. So the Pashup Pshat in Shammai we might have thought, and that's the mission in Idis when it says over Shammai, it just says Afilu Etzem Echad. Very simple. Shammai Yomer Afilu Etzem Echad. He learned the mission of playing without the Gemara, without this brisa being quoted. He would have said that Shammai says he's more mafal than everybody. That a Rova doesn't have to have any conditions from any bone, even if you have one bone. Even Shammai said, even the Pashut said 2 or 3 bones. The Gemara explains it even means not only 2 or 3 bones, it has to be chashav bones, the ones that make up the robe of the height. But Shammai says, in any case, Shammai says you don't need all that. 1 bone is enough. That's how we would have learned Shammai if we would have just read the Mishnah and Udyas. But the Brisa says, Afilu etzem min hashedro min hagagolos. And the Gemara takes Pashut, the Gemara understands Pashut that he means to say that the Shedra and the Golgolas are something that would have been Tamei if it would have been the whole Shedra or the whole Golgolas. And now we're saying that if you don't have the whole Shedra or the whole Golgolas, but it's coming, min ha-Shedra, min ha-Golgolas, not ha-Shedra ba-Golgolas. The Shedra Golgolas surely is Tamei on the sun, even though it's not a Rova. But if it's a bone that comes from part of the Shedra, part of the Golgolas, since that's a Chashav bone, that if it would have been all there, it would have been Tamei. So if you have a rova of it, it's also tamei.
Not a rova, it's just the yachid. I thought it's just one part of the shidduch.
A rova means a rova kav. A rova means a quarter of a kav. It's a volume. The rova is a volume. The volume of 6 eggs. So tell them we're talking about that this volume of 6 eggs has certain conditions in order to be tamei. It's not enough that that's a volume of bones. You have a bag of bones. That's the volume of 6 eggs. The verse is telling you that's not enough to be tamei b'olam. If you learn simple, and someone tells you rova kav is tamei b'olam, so you say a bag of bones altogether it's a quarter kav, so it's tamei b'olam. So they say no, these bones. So now that you don't have the whole schedule or the whole Golgolas, but at least you have a rova of it, a rova kav of it, not a rova, not a quarter of the schedule, a rova kav of the bones of a schedule matter or Golgolas. So that's also tamei. So that was Shammai. Again, the Mishnah doesn't say it. The Mishnah is Afilu Etzem Echad. You could have learned any bone, but here it says in the Brisa from the schedule or the Golgolas. So the Gemara understands. The Brisa seems to understand. The Gemara understands the Brisa that it has to be from these chashav bones. What's chashav about them? Because if it would have been here, the whole bone, the whole shedra, the whole golgolas would have been tamei. So now that you have part of it, if you have a rova akav of it, it's also tamei. What does the Gemara see from this? Our subject is not talking about a rova. We're not interested in the subject of rova. We're interested in the subject of shedra golgolas. And the question was if the shedra golgolas is tamei dafka together, both of them together, or the shedra separate and the golgolas separate. So the Gemara wants to prove from Shammai that since he says min hashedra o min al golgolas, this word o, that means that the shedra alone would have been tamei, the golgolas alone would have been tamei, and therefore if you have part of the shedra, a rova kav, part of the shedra, or a rova kav, part of the golgolas, that's enough to become tamei mitad rova, because you have a chashav bone. What's the chashav bone? Because the shedra alone is tamei, the golgolas alone is tamei. That's the Gemara's raya that to answer our question that either one alone would have been tamei over. The Gemara. Anybody? Okay.
Now you know what to do with that.
The Gemara rejects the proof. We wanted to prove now that either one alone is tamei. The Gemara rejects the proof. Shani Shammai the machmir. Maybe only Shammai holds like that. Means you see that Shammai is the one who's talking. He happens to hold that the Shedra alone is tamei. The Golgolus alone is tamei. And the Rabbanan don't agree to that. Why don't they agree to it? The Gemara is suggesting maybe that's what they're arguing about. Maybe the reason why the Rabbanan argue, who's the Rabbanan? Beishamai, Beisilo. Maybe they argue because they say that the Shedra alone is not tamei.
Not big enough, it's not long enough. It's not.
No, because you have to have the Shedra and the Golgolus.
Ah,
That's what they're arguing about.
uh-huh.
It's a little bit strange because Beishamai, Beisilo, they just spoke about Rov Binyan. They didn't talk about the Shedra and the Golgolus. But the Gemara is suggesting maybe they also would agree that if it would have been from the Shedra and the Golgolus, it would have been tamei. Thus, Shammai says Shedra Omen Golgolus. That they argue with. They're arguing in this point that the Shammai says that the Shedra alone is tamei, the Golgolus alone is tamei, and therefore part of the Shedra, if it's a Rov Akav, is tamei. Part of the Golgolus, if it's a Rov Akav, is tamei. And the Rabbanan say no, that even the Shedra alone wouldn't be tamei, the Golgolus alone wouldn't be tamei. So you don't think can't make a right to our question because they only prove that Shammai holds that way. But the Rabbanan will argue and they'll say you have to have the Shedra and the Golgolus. So the Gemara says, okay, so then very nice. If that's what they're arguing about, so then I'm going to pass like the Rabbanan. So live shemine time of the Beishamai the Machmir Rabbanan Adi Kasher the Golgolus. So let's go the other way. The way you're explaining, that's the Machlokis Rabbanan and Shammai. That Shammai says the Shedra alone is tamei, the Golgolus alone is tamei, and the Rabbanan say you need after the Shedra and the Golgolus. Oh, so we found the answer to our question that according to Rabbanan, it's only tamei if it's the Shedra and the Golgolus. So bring a raya to the opposite way. That the Gemara says also not. Lo, could be also not. Could be they also agree that the Shedra alone is tamei, the Golgolus alone is tamei. I tell no plea Rabbanan lay the Shammai yellow be'etzem echad the asim in Shedra umin al Golgolus. Abalecha di say be'enei afilu chada min home. Maybe they also agree to the Yesod of Shammai, to the case of Shammai, that the Shedra alone is tamei, the Golgolus alone is tamei. But they don't hold that a part of the Shedra or a part of the Golgolus is going to be tamei because Rov Akav. That they hold you have to have, it should be from Rov Binyan. But if you'd ask me in all this, the din of the Shedra and the Golgolus, could they also agree? We agree to Shammai that the Shedra alone is tamei, the Golgolus alone is tamei. But now that we're talking about Rov Akav, Rov Atzamos, Rov Akav, a bone matter, that what does that have to be comprised of in order to have the tumah of Rov Atzamos? We hold that if it's from Rov Binyan. If it's from the Shedra of the Golgolus, or even both of them together, maybe that's not enough. It has to be, or maybe they would agree if it's Shedra, but the Shedra alone, the Golgolus alone, even though it is tamei, that's not enough to make the tumah of Rov Atzamos.
What does it mean, be'etzem achad?
One bone.
They're
Ad kan
arguing about what?
etzem echad. No, yeah, but etzem echad the asi min Shedra or min Golgolus.
That one
One bone
that comes from-
It's not one bone. It doesn't have to do with Rov Atzamos. A bone. The main point is not the word etzem echad as much as the asi min Shedra or min Golgolus. That's only part of a bone. What are we talking about? What's the tumah of Rov Atzamos? There's a tumah called Rov Atzamos, and we're trying to find the conditions of that tumah.
Yeah.
One says Rov Binyan, and he was saying that even if it comes from the Shedra or comes from the Golgolus, it's enough to have tumas Rov Atzamos, and that they're arguing. Not because they hold that the Shedra alone, it could be the whole Shedra, it wouldn't be tamei. They also agreed that the Shedra alone would be tamei. But now we're talking about the din of Rov Atzamos, and we're talking about what the conditions are in order to have this tumah of Rov Atzamos. So they said it has to come from Rov Binyan. But if it's going to come from the Shedra, even though the Shedra alone, if it would have been all completely here, it would have been tamei. But now to say, so therefore, if it's a part of a bone, it's only one bone. You have one bone that's part of the Shedra. And Shammai says it's tamei because it comes from the Shedra, which if it would be the whole
As long as
Shedra,
it's
it
enough,
would have
as
been
long
tamei.
as it's rova.
So yeah, and he says that's enough. That's a Rova. The din of tumas Rov Atzamos is enough that it comes from a Shedra.
And they would argue that.
And I say no, that's not enough. It's only one bone that comes from the from part. It's not a whole bone. It's from that it comes from the Shedra. That's not enough. You have to have Rov Binyan. But they also would agree maybe that the Shedra alone will be tamei, the Golgolus alone will be tamei.
Very good.
And that's the end of the sugya. I did this yesterday already, but I didn't have clarity. I think it's a little bit more clear now. I'm not sure if it's still clear, but that's the end of the sugya. The Gemara tried 4 proofs about the subject about Shedra of Golgolus, and the Gemara doesn't have a proof. The last proof is trying to prove that first that it either one is enough, And then the Gemara switched it, maybe on the contrary, we prove that Rabbanan say you need both. Also, the Gemara says not a proof. So we leave it hanging. The Gemara is over. At this point, the Gemara is over, and we don't know the answer. We got till home, and that's the end. The Gemara had a question that whenever it says Tumas Meis, Tumas Oha, a schedule of Golas, we don't know if it means both of them together. But either one alone wouldn't have Tumas Oha, or it means either one alone. The spine alone, the Golas alone, is enough to have Tumas Oha, and the Gemara doesn't know. And the end of Sugya. We mentioned that the Rambam says either one alone is Tamei, and the Mefarshim are not clear where the Rambam got it from. End of the Sugya schedule of Golas. Whenever you learn the Mishnah here, the Mishnah Nazir, the Mishnah and all this, and it says the whole list of things that I'm a Tamei Ba'ol, and it says schedule of Golas. So there's a question how to read the truck. How do you make the punctuation? Do you read it B'nashim Achas, ala schedule of Golas, or do you say in one B'nashim Achas, you do it in one breath, schedule of Golas, or you do ala Shedra, comma, ala Golas, comma. And each one is alone.
If it was a comma, then it would be each one is enough to.
Right. And if you
And
take
the two together.
right. So the Gemara doesn't know how to read the Mishnah. Do you put it with a comma in between or no comma in between?
What do we do?
So we read the Mishnah, we say both possibilities. Or you can read the Mishnah how you want, and you might be the Pashat Mishnah, whichever way. But the Gemara had a question about it, and the Rambam Paskins either one alone is Tameh, and we're not sure where the Rambam got it from. New Sugya. Should I introduce that as hard? It's hard just to read the words of what do the words mean. So I'm going pretty slow today because I don't have much, I didn't prepare much. I wasn't able to go too far. Maybe everyone's invited to say what they think it means. Here comes a question. Rova at Samos. I'll just highlight the question. Rova at Samos. This is his question. Rova at Samos and Shedra Golas mine. What's the din of a Rova at Samos from the Shedra Golas? That's what that's what we've been talking about these words all the time. We said this is the din of Rova at Samos. The Shammai said Rovinian. They still said Rovinian also. Shammai said even from the Shedra or the Golas. So what happened now? What's the Gemara's question? Rova at Samos. Then Shedra Golas mine. What's the din if you have a Rova at Samos from the Shedra and the Golas? So the Gemara explains itself. The Gemara takes out the explanation, takes out 3 lines, but we'll learn what it says. In the Gesos, it does seem to say this. So we'll learn the way the Gemara says. There's going to be some difficulty. This all is explaining the Gemara's question. And what is that? What do the words mean? We said in all this, it says that one of the Tumas Ohel is Rova at Samos. So if you have a quarter cup of bones, we had all the conditions just mentioned, Machlokes, Beshama, Beisilel, Shammai, what the conditions are of a Rova at Samos. But whatever they are, there's a Tumas Meis, Tumas Ohel, that's called Rova at Samos. And our Mishnah, when it had the list of Aleilu and Nazir Megaleach, it doesn't just say whatever's Matame over there and all this is Matame over here. It says some differences. There's some things on Matame for Ohel, but it's not going to be a Nazir Megaleach. And we had that one of the differences were that over there it says a Rova, and here it says a Chatzikav. Here it says a Revia Saddam, here it says a Chatzilod. That even the Salach Moshe Messina, that even though a Rova Kav, Rova Atzamos, a quarter of Kav of Atzamos is Matame Ba'ohel, but it's not enough to make the Nazir cancel his Nazirs. That was the din of Chatzikav. If you go back to the Mishnah was back on Mem Tesam Beis, and it said that Mem Tesam Beis, that was the Mishnah where it said Al Elu Tumas Nazir Megaleach. I should go back. I'll try to go back and see. We'll have to come back here to 104. Here's the Mishnah. Al Elu Tumas Nazir Megaleach, 49b. So it said Meis, Kzais V'na Meis, Kzais Nesel, Kavod Rokov, Shedruk, Golas. We don't know how to read this. If you have a comment between or not, fine. Even Mena Meis, even Mena Chai. Then it says Chatzi Kavat Samos. And we pointed out that in Oholus it says the same Mishnah almost, but over there it says a Rova Kavat Samos. That over there for Tumas Ohel, a Rova Kav, a quarter of a Kav is enough to be Tumas Ohel. Here it says a half a Kav. What happened? So there's Lacham Moshe Messinai. that Rova Kav, which is usually Mitame Ohel, it's not enough to make a Nazir cancel as Nazir. You have to have a Chatzi Kav. And here the Gemara is questioning, very nice, but maybe if it's going to be a Rova Kav of Shedra V'Golgolas, maybe it is going to even cancel the Nazir's Nazir. Because it's specialized bones, it's not regular bones, it's the bones of that would have had Tumah by themselves if it would have been the whole thing. Shedra V'Golgolas, the Nazir is Megaleach. If it means both together or means either one separate, but there's such thing called Shedra V'Golgolas. I think the Gemara is not going into the question now if it means both of them together or each one separate. But whatever it is, if you don't have the Shedra V'Golgolas itself, you don't have the whole things, but you have parts of it. The Roba Akav is made up of Shedra V'Golgolas matter. Maybe that's enough that the Nazir also should be Megaleach, even though we have a law from Moshe Sinai that a Roba Kav is not enough for a Nazir to be Megaleach, to stop his Nazirus. You have to have a Chatzi Kav. Maybe that's a Chatzi Kav of regular bones. But if it would be a specialized bones of Shedra V'Golgolas bones, or maybe we'll throw in also, if you'd have Rob Minyan and Rob Minyan bones also.
Then you don't need.
Maybe even Roba Kav, the Nazir also will be Megaleach. What I said, I just put it in a footnote that it doesn't make so much sense what I said, because to say that a Roba Kav of specialized bones is a question, even the din of a regular Tumas Ohel is the Gemara is finished saying that you have to have specialized bones over there also. You have to have either Rob Binyan or Rob Minyan. So that shouldn't be a question about a Nazir being more chomer, because the regular din of Rova is Rob Minyan. So of course, when the Mishnah says you have to have a Chatzi Kav, it means that the Rova Kav of Rob Minyan is not enough. Maybe the Gemara is only asking on Shedra V'Golgolas for some reason that it should be more than Rob Minyan, which before sounded opposite. Before it sounded that Rob Minyan is Tamei according to Beishamai's Hillel. Shammai says even Shedra V'Golgolas. So the Gemara is not being consistent. A lot of things are like mamish opposite, as the Gemara said before. The Gemara seems to ask that even though there's a din of regular robot samos, that's not enough for a Nazir to be Megaleach. It's Tamei Meis, but it's not enough for a Nazir to be Megaleach. Maybe if it's a robot kav of specialized bones, which the Gemara says Shedra V'Golgolas, and we spoke about how about Rob Binyan is that seems to be not enough. Maybe if the Rova Kav is made up of Shedra V'Golgolas, maybe the Nazir is also going to be Megaleach. We'll see that inside the words. By a Nazir. What's the din of a quarter kav of bones that's made up of the Shedra V'Golgolas by a Nazir? What's the question? When does the Mishnah say that a Nazir is only a Megaleach when it's a Chatzi Kav? A quarter kav is not enough to become Tamei for a Nazir. It becomes Tamei, but it's not going to stop his Nazirus. That's when you have to have a half a kav only when it's other bones. Different bones. Maybe if the Roba Kav is made up of the spine and the skull, that's more chamur, and even a Roba Samos is also going to make the Nazir Megaleach. Or there's no difference. There's never going to be Tamei on bones, only if it's going to be a Roba Kav.
What makes it more chamor? What makes those?
Because we see that the Shedra and the Golgolas alone is Tamei. If it would be the whole Shedra and Golgolas, either one separately or both of them together, there is such a tumah called Shedra Golgolas. Other bones are not. And the Shedra Golgolas is special, that is Tamei Bohel, even if it's not a certain size, certain amount. So maybe when you have an amount, there's also a Rova Kav, so maybe it's more chomer and it's going to be Tamei even for the Nazir. Amar Rava, Toshma. So Rava wants to answer Rami Bachama's question, being a proof. It says a Shedra Golgolas. I'll say pshat in the Gemara that I didn't see in the Mefarshim, but maybe it's easier pshat. Shedra Golgolas. In our Mishnah it says Shedra Golgolas is Tamei by a Nazir. Yeah, the Nazir is going to be Megaleach. Peace out the night of Robot Samos, Dosim and Shedra Golgolas. Omya, Lisni al Robot Samos Abram and Shedra. I think he's asking, why doesn't it say so in the Mishnah? The Mishnah says all the cases, we just looked at it a second, it said which ones are Nazir Megaleach. This Mishnah on Non Testament base, it says on the following Tumas there's a Nazir Megalech. It had a whole list: Meis, Kazais Menam Meis, Kazais Nasa, Molei David, Shedruk, Golas. Then it says Chasikav. Why does if it will be true that a rova of Shedruk Golas is also Nazir Megalech, it should have said so. It says Shedruk Golas. Tell me the whole Shedruk Golas. It says Chasikav. Some is saying that it means from other bones, but you want to add on also that there's another case that Nazir Megalech. It would be rova Kav of Shedruk Golas. So why doesn't it say so? The Mishnah should have said so. That's more Mastimim. So why does Rava want to prove that the Nazir is not Megalech? There's no special chumrah, and even if it will be Shedruk Golas bones, it wouldn't be enough just because it's a rova Kav. You have to have a Chasikav. That's Rav on the bottom over here. The Mishnah says Shedruk Golas, and also says Chatzikav. Yisakadaita, that a rova that comes from the Shedruk Golas is going to be more chomer, it's going to be Nazir Megaleach. So I should have said so. It should have said rova Tzamos Abam and Shedruk. Don't only say the whole Shedruk on the Golas. Say a rova Tzamos of the Shedruk. But surely you have to say the Shedruk also. It would have to say the Shedruk because it will be a Shedruk which is not a rova. It could be a small Shedruk also. It could be a baby that died. And it would be a rova, it will be a shedra that's not a rova. So it has to say what it says. But it also should have said rova that comes from the shedra. If you say that it's more chomer, why doesn't it say so? I think in short, Rava is saying if it would be tameh, if the nazir would be megalech, it should have said so. So Rava brings a proof that it's not more chomer, and also the nazir is not megalech only if it's a half a cow. If it's a quarter of a cow, it's not going to be tameh, even if it's from the shedra of Gola's bones. The more is the kasha on the top of what Yom Gimel this is, top of Yom Gimel. The more seems to ask a kasha, Stephen and Rava. Rava Dashvin is saying a proof that there's not more chomer and never is a rova at Tzamos going to be megaleach by a nazir, even if it's from the shedder of Golas. The more is a kasha that we should have noticed when we learned it. I think we did notice it a little bit. If you go back over there in the sugya, the Gemara is jumping back and forth. I'm sorry that I'm also jumping here. That the Mishnah over there said, "A mace and k'zayis ben ames. Alei lo anazim megaleach. Al ames, val k'zayis ben ames." And the Gemara said some chas came in that the Talmid Rabbi Yehuda didn't want to Talmid them of Rav Meir because they can't run him. And some chas came in and he says that Rav Meir learns the Mishnah mace k'zayis ben ames. And if it says k'zayis ben ames, it doesn't have to say mace. And over there, Rava said a teretz. Anamad Aleph over there. This is the afternoon probably. Amar Rava Amar lo nitzrucha elo l'rov binyano l'rov binyano she'en behen rova tzamos. But the Mishnah left out something, and that's included in when we said mace. It says mace and k'zayis ben mace. The kasha was if it says k'zayis ben mace, you don't have to say mace. It says even the bigger chiddush, even k'zayis ben mace. Rava said, you're right, good kasha. And the word mace is coming to include another case that the Mishnah doesn't say. The case will be rov binyan. That's also tamei, mace, and the nose is megaleach, and rov binyan. The robe of the skeleton, or most of the skeleton, most of the number of the skeleton bones is gonna make the nazir tamei. And he says, even though it doesn't have a rova. Now those words are very strange. Shein ben rova. He's talking about a nazir. When is a nazir megaleach? And it says that a rov binyan, even though it doesn't have a rova. Everyone should have jumped up. I think we did jump up at the time. That it doesn't. Rova is not the number. He should have said shein ben chatzikav. There's no such thing as a rova by a nazir. Whatever is by a regular mace rova, by a nazir has to be a chetzi. A quarter kav is not enough. So when he wanted to say that, I want to tell you in Mishnah is adding on another case that rov binyan, the nazir is gonna be megaleach. He's gonna have to. He cancels those naziris if he became tamei to rov binyan, and he wants to say even though it doesn't have tumah mitzad the quantity, the volume, it's going to become tamei because it's the rov binyan. So he shouldn't have said shein ben robat samos. He should have said shein ben chatzikav samos, because the whole din of nazir is only by a chatzi, not by a rova. The fact that Rava himself it's not that he's proving it, but the way Rava spoke, it sounded like he had an opinion. He was opinionated, and he held that a robat samos sometimes would be a nazir megaleach. I didn't see that the Mepharshim say this pshat, but it seems to be a nice pshat. That's the most kasha, that Rava himself contradicting himself, because before this Gemara he spoke about the nazir in order to say that it's a tumah Here it says Robin, Agmar is going to talk about Shedder of Golas, whatever the case is. But Rava said, Ein Ben Robat Samos. And Robat Samos means that he's considering that the din of Nazir has something to do with a Rova. And that's a Chiddush because there is no din of Rova by Mace. The fact by Nazir. The fact that he said Rova and didn't say Echetzi sounds like he has the opinion that a Rova Kav would be tummy under certain conditions. So that's the Gemara's kasha over here, maybe. Top of Non Gimel. But Rabbi Hudama, Lenis V'chal L'Shedder V'Golas, or Robinian, Shem Ben Rovat Samos, and he says Rovat Samos. That sounds like Rabbi holds that if it would be specialized bones, even a Rovat Samos would have been Nazir Megaleach. And here he just finished proving in the Mishnah. He said a proof that always it's a Chetzi Kav. It's never a Rova. It's contradiction in Rova. So the next question, the next couple of words is the answer, and everyone has problems with it. Vasa de Shama me Rabbi Akiva. After he heard it from Rabbi Akiva, like it sounds like Kabbalah. It sounds like who's talking about Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi didn't hear from Rabbi Akiva. Then he heard from Rabbi Akiva. What do the words mean? Vasa de Shama me Rabbi Akiva. Others change it to Vasa de Shama me Mar Ukva, not Rabbi Akiva, but Mar Ukva. And it comes out that Marukva says something, we don't know about Marukva in our sugya. The other half of gear said that I'll leave it to Beis Shammai. So I don't know what the answer is. So if we could leave it like that, or if anybody has a pshat,
I'll leave it to Beis Shammai.
I'll leave it to Beis Shammai. So what does that
That's
mean?
the
I'll leave it to Beis Shammai. What does leave it to Beis Shammai mean? I don't know. I don't know how to read the words. So if it's okay if I can leave it, I don't know the pshat. The Gemara is still about a question. If there's going to be a lot of I don't knows coming up, the Gemara continues with the question: is a nazir more chamor, even though a nazir usually has to have a chatzikav in order to cancel his naziros? If it's specialized bones, is a rova kav going to be enough that he should have to cancel his naziros? Tashma Shama Yomer Esamechad Menashed Yomer Gogolas. That was what we had earlier. And yesterday we just learned it today again that in the din of Rova Samos, Shammai said that even one bone of the shedra or the golgolas, if it's not the whole bone, but it's part of the shedra, part of the golgolas, that's enough that it should be the din of Rova. And the Gemara wants to prove from this about our question. What's our question? If a nazir is different than the regular Thomas Mace, Ad Khan is the Gemara's raya, and the Chor doesn't make any sense because we know that there's a din of Rova by a regular Mace. We're talking about is there a din Rova by a nazir. And why does the Gemara bring this proof? Why does that have to do anything? We're talking about, we know that there's a din of Rovat Samos that's by a regular Tumas Ohel. And there the question was, what are the conditions? Rovinian, Shedra V'Gogola, Shammai says, but what does it have to do with us? Our question is about a Nazir. Is a Nazir more Chomor than Tumas Mace? And the Gemara sounds like it thinks that it's a good answer. What's a good answer? We're not talking about Tumas Mace, we're talking about a Nazir. So there's a difficulty with this Gemara. What does the Gemara mean to say? And the Gemara changes the gears a few times because of this kasha that the Gemara brings in halachas of a regular Tumas Mace. But the way we're learning, we don't have a shot what the Gemara's kasha is. If the Gemara is talking about as a nazir more chomor, even though nazir usually has a kula, has a leniency, that even though Tumas Mace is not a quarter kav, that nazir is not magalech only if it has a half a kav. And the question was, if it's a half a kav, if it's a quarter kav of specialized bones, is it going to be more chomor by nazir also? And the Gemara brings the brisa, which just talks about a regular mace and says the condition of a rova kav. What does it have to do with our question? Our question was about nazir, not about Tumas Mace. So I don't know what the question is. And the Gemara goes on to answer, you're right, that you do see here something about Shammai. Shani Shammai, the Machmit Fei. Maybe only Shammai holds like that a quarter kav would be enough for a nazir. But we want to know according to the Rabbanan. So the Gemara says, okay, so take that side. There should be no time with the Shammai, the Machmit, Rabbanan, Adik Chatzi Kav at Samos. So say that if you want to say Shammai is more Machmit, so then on the contrary, they want to argue, and they say that it's not gonna be it's not gonna be megalech only have a chatzikav like regular. And the Gemara says, I don't know if the Rabbanan argue on Shammai. Till not can of think Rabbanan lay the Shammai ela be'esem echad. Although the Rovat Samos afilu Rabbanan moldu. Maybe they only are saying that if it's one bone, you're saying that a Rovat Samos is stomach even one bone if it comes from the schedule of the Gogolas. And that they don't agree. They only have to have at least two bones or Rovinian. But you want to know what they hold the din of Rovat Samos, besides that condition alone, maybe they also would agree that a robot summers of specialized bones would be enough that the nazir should be megaleach. So I just say, and all this whole Gemara that I don't know what the kasha was, I don't know what the teretz was, I don't know what the raya was, so I don't feel comfortable. I'm just saying what the words seem to say, and I really don't understand. So if that's good, that was not good, I don't know what to do. So I'll go further, one more Gemara. Rabbi Lezer. So that's to go back to the main sugya, that the main sugya, the Mishnah says that there's such a thing, kind of tumas, and it had a list of tumas oil, and it had a chiddush that even though usually there's tumas mace on a quarter kav, the nazir not megalech only on a half a kav. Rabbi Lezer. So Kenim Arishonim, Iktasan Hayivomim. I'll highlight this. Some said, I make different colors over here. Some said, Chatzi akavat samos v'chatzi lug dam lako. And then Rovat samos the revias dam lo lako. That was one version. That if it's a half a cow or a half a lug, then lako. That applies to everything. What does everything mean? That it has tumas mace, of course, it's tamei ba'ohel, and the nazir is also megalech. Means as far as anything you want to know, does it make tamei? Yes, for every purpose, lakol, for all purposes. One,
Even Thomas Nazir.
even tumas nazir, even the nazir, even not only tumas mace, but even the nazir is also going to cancel his nazirus if it was a chatzi kav of bones or a half a lug. But if it was only a quarter kav at samos or a quarter lug, rova at samos rova adam, then that's low lakol. That's not going to apply to everything, because it's only going to apply to tumas mace, but it wouldn't make the nazir cancel his nazirus. That was one girsa. Then there was another girsa amongst, not a girsa, a different opinion amongst the Zakanim. Some Zakanim are Rishonim. Some said this way. That's more or less what we said in our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, we said that Roba Kam has tumas mace, but note that the nazir should make a lech, it has to be a half a kam, and also by the dam. Usually, revius dam is enough to be metame. And by nas, it has to be a chatzi lug, two quarters, a half. And then there's another gersa. Af rova atzamos urvias dam lako. Even a quarter kav of bone and a quarter of a lug is tameh, which means not only by tumas mace, even for a nazir, there's no difference between tumas mace and nazir. The nazir doesn't have any leniency. Even by a nazir is going to be megaleach if he became a tameh from robot samos or revias down. There's another way of saying that there's no difference between a nazir and a tameh mace. It's also going to be megaleach on a quarter kav and a quarter revias. That was the second opinion. There's some came this way, Miksasim this way, Miksasim this way. Then there's a Bezdin Shalach Reya, a later Bezdin, which will make this into a new opinion. Chatzi kav ad samos for chatzi log dam lakol. If it was a half a kav or a half a log, that applies to everything. Which everybody agreed to that. That everybody holds that's surely going to make him tamei mace. It's going to be megaleach. How about rova? Rova samos revias dam the truma v'kachim. They didn't say the mamash a new opinion. They said that the rova and the revias dam, it's not even tamei for a regular Thomas mace. Till now we had everybody agreed that if it would be a rova, it would apply to Thomas mace, like the Mishnah Nola says that the quarter kav of bones and a quarter of lug of dam makes somebody tamei mace. And here they said something else. So far, everybody seemed to say this, and they seem to say that the whole chumrah of a quarter kav and a quarter of a lug is only for truma v'kachim. Avalo l'nazir v'osa pesach. That only kachim has the chumrah. Truma and kachim have the chumrah, but regular tumas mace is only going to be if it's a half a kav and half a lug. If it's going to be a quarter kav and a quarter lug, then it's only tamei for truma v'kachim. Avalo l'nazir. Okay, that's good. That nazir is only going to be if it's going to be a chatzi, and osa pesach. Osa pesach also is not going to have the chumrah, and he's going to be considered tohar. So that's a little difficult because pesach is kachim. Pesach is a korban. So what if it says by kachim yom machmir? I mean, it's been adin. If it says any kind of, it's only true of kachim means it's a chumrah. It's a chumrah that a quarter of a kav and a quarter of a lug is b'tamim. But we make a chumrah by truma and kachim that it is yes going to become tamim. But if you say that it is tamim for the chumrah at least by truma and kachim, how could you say that the osa pesach not the nazir is good, that the nazir is not kachim? And we're going to say that the nazir is not megaleh since it's only a chumrah of truma b'kachim. By truma and kachim we're machmir that even a quarter kav and a quarter lug is going to be mitamim. And for nazir we're not machmir. But the osa pesach, that's a contradiction. What does it mean? If it talks about kachim, so we were machmir by kachim. What does it mean to say that osa pesach doesn't have the chumrah of a quarter kav, quarter lug? So the Rambam explains that also Pesach here doesn't mean he's going to eat the kashim. He's not allowed to eat the korban Pesach. If he had contact with the quarter lug, the quarter kav, he's not going to eat the korban Pesach. But if he's holding that he's not going to eat it, but he's on the 7th day of getting out of this tumah. He had a tumah 7 days ago. He's on the 7th day of Pesach, and tonight will be Torah already. But the Allah is, you want to know if he's able to shech the korban on him.
Also Pesach.
Also means shechting the korban. Not that he's going to. That's right. The words over here. Where do I have it? I think I wrote it down over here. Round up known what? Nun Gimel. Nun Gimel. Here's a Rambam. Tahainu b'shvi shelo. Achash etoval. V'ochel pischol erev. He's going to be able to. The halach is he's going to be able to eat the korban Pesach tonight because he already went to the mikvah. And tonight will be ready after Erev Shemesh, and it'll be mutter to eat the korban Pesach. The question is you tell me right now? What? Osa Pesach. Not that, right. The Osa Pesach means that it's mutter to shech the korban for him, even though right now he's tummy. Usually, not only you have to eat the korban Pesach b'tar, but when they're shechting it also, at least according to maybe there's a machlokes about it, but some would hold that you have to be Torah when they're shechting the korban Pesach. Even though tonight you'll be Torah, it's not enough. You have to be Torah now in the afternoon, Pesach afternoon, when they're shechting the korban Pesach. And here it says that chumrah they didn't make on a quarter kav at Samos. Means that 7 days ago he had contact with an ohel, with a robe at Samos or a revius dam. So then we say he could do the korban Pesach. We'll allow him to do the korban Pesach, even though we did make him tummy for Truma and Kachim, but not for Osa Pesach.
And who says that one?
This was the Rambam Strat and how to explain the difference between Pesach and Kachim. The Rambam Pesach Mishnah, he says that Kachim only, the chumrah of roba is only by Truma and Kachim, not by nazir or by the person who's doing the korban Pesach. Means they're doing it for him on Erev Pesach. He's considered Torah because with the Raisa he seems to be Torah since he didn't have contact with a half a kav and a half a lug. That's the end of this Raisa that is started on Rabbi Lezer. It was Kenim Abishonim Machlokis. The first opinion said, like it says in our Mishnayos, that roba, it's almost roba dam. Roba is only for Thomas Mace. But then for a nazir, it has to be a chasikab. Some said that there's no such chumrah, and even for a no such leniency for a nazir, and even a roba kav and a revius dam is also going to make him a galeach. And others said that even the chumrah of a roba is not a regular tumah. Not only a nazir, even also Pesach also is not considered tamei having contact with a roba till it's going to be a chetzi. It seems to be that there was a case where we shown him mikzasa, and then there was a bezdin shalachbeya. A later bezdin seemed to make something like a compromise or a paskening after the earlier machlokes. It was the older zakenim, zakenim of Rishonim. They had two opinions, and then later bezdin shalachbeya had a third opinion to be machriya between the two opinions. But the question is, which the Meforshim say, it means that Talmidim cannot be machriya in a machlokes of the earlier generations. So how could it be that they came and said achra between these two Zekanim?
Shlishis is a third.
A third. That's what means third. And here Tosha says that it means
A third of what?
Talmid,
Of
a third opinion, so to speak. A third opinion is not going to be machriya between the earlier opinions. Tosha says,
the third opinion
is that right? That's Tosha says that it means business shalach and the most kasha yesh
the third opinion does.
So here it says you're saying usually it does.
Yishmael said it does.
So why is this called achrosh lishas? Here he says Hainu Talmidim. The Tosha over here, I just highlighted it that yesh meforshim achrosh lishas. Anybody? Okay, there it is. יש מפורשים. יש מפורשים מאחור שליש היינו תלמידים. Okay, it's over there in the Tosfos says
Based in,
that some say that is Talmidim is called as that's not considered achla. That's not considered they be able to decide between two earlier rabbanim. So that maybe other pshatim also not achla shlishis, but that's the most kasha that who are they to say an opinion to decide between the two earlier zakanim? Rabbi Yaakov Aridi, Yipi Shmuel Amru. They didn't say it on their own. They said we have a Masorah. Yipi Chaga is Chaim Malachi. Chaga is Chaim Malachi with the last of the prophets, the last of the Nevi'im, and they didn't say it on their own. They said it that they have a Masorah from Chaga is Chaim Malachi. So that's why they are eligible to say opinion over here, even though they're a later generation. Because they're not saying it on their own, they're saying the name of earlier generations. So it comes out that the Chumrah of Robat Samas and Revi'ez Dam doesn't apply to somebody who's also Pesach. Means with the rice that is not Tameh, but the rice is only Tameh with a Chatzi, and that's what we're going to say by a Nazir. And also Pesach, he's also not considered Tameh because he had contact to Ohel with a Roba and a Revi'ez, only if it's going to be a Chatzi Kav and a Chatzi Lob. Ad Kan for today.
so I'm sorry, then Amar Rabbi Yaakov Bar.
Idi, the answer is Yipi Shmuel Amru. Shmuel said it in the name of what they heard, not their own. They didn't make Achwa on their own. They heard it from earlier generations. Yipi Chaga is Chaim Malachi. They had a Masorah from these three Nevi'im.
Okay.
And that's what we paskin.
That's how it seems to be Paskin. That's how it seems to
don't know
be
that.
Paskin. That what? That also Pesach.
Everybody knows that. No, everybody knows that Rosary is the Tommy Bola.
That a Rova
Rova
Revi'ez,
Revi'ez.
Rova
Kav is
Rova Kava Batzamos and a Revi'ez Adam.
Everybody knows that's the Tommy Bola.
So now it says that I think the Rambam seems to say so. Let's look
Then
it
what,
up a second.
For the Pesach, it wouldn't apply.
That
And I was saying that it's only.
here's this Rambam over here. Let's see if we can find it. The base. You have here Korban Pesach and Hilchos Bias Mikdash and Thomas Meis. Which one should we look at? I have the Chofetz Chaim over here also. Maybe that'll be easier to find. Oh no, for those of you who's down to Gemara. וכן ששם רבי במסניסים, דין הנזם מגלח אלא על חצי קו עצמוס וחצי לא דם, ובמסכת סעודה ששם רביעס דם ורוב הקו עצמוס מטעמי בורל, והיינו לתרומה וקודשים וכן קיימו לעולם. So he says that that's the halach, it's only for truma percussion, it's not real, it's not, the device is not dummy. What does he have here? Number noon? Yeah. Sham b'alacha beis, the lin, you know, the dafka chatzi kav mטעמי בורל, Olin Pesach Sasam, the Perek Vov Milchus Korban Pesach, the Dafka Kishanitmo B'Tuma Shanozim Megalech. Okay, he says it goes together. That also Pesach is only if it's a Tuma Shanozim Megalech. Avalin and Shad Vorm Sasam B'Reish Perek Gimel the Hilchus Tumas Meis the After Rova it's almost Mtam. What does that mean? Shad Vorim. These are the two things that he says not. Nazir and also Pesach. He says it's only if it's going to be a Chatzi.
So that's the bigger quantity.
Right, but Shad Vor. What does Shad Vor mean? Truma and Kachim. What else is going to be relative to? I guess Bias Mikdash. What's going to be by Bias Mikdash? It's not Bias Mikdash. Also is going to be also to come. That's what it seems. That's also called Kachim. Kachim is also Bias Mikdash. So the regular things that is relevant to know if he's telling me. So there's the Chumrah of Chatzika, but Nazir and also Pesach and Shvi Shalom is only if it's a Chatzi. Chatzi look Chatzika. Okay, if everybody knows, they have to give a clap on the Vima and tell them that it's only for Truma V'Kachim. I don't know what he meant when he said everybody knows. People that
Okay, I guess so, yeah.
all that's gonna always mean for Truma V'Kachim. That's what comes out. It's good, definitely good to hold on to it.
Like you said,